Welcome back to UnchartedX. This is Ben, and I have another video swapcast for you today. This is a really interesting one. It's been one that I've been looking forward to getting into for quite some time. We're going to take a close look at both the Karnak and Luxor temples in Upper Egypt. To my mind, these are a couple of the most enigmatic and interesting temples. They are just chock-a-block full of all sorts of evidence for ancient high technology, as well as just some astonishing remnants of what must have been just gargantuan single-piece statues and other granite objects. These sites were some major objectives for me in my recent trip to Egypt, which was late 2020. I had previously visited these sites, but I hadn't had the chance to film there. So we're going to take a bit of time to go through all of my footage, pretty much, from both Karnak and Luxor. As always, we're joined by Kyle and Russ, brothers of the Serpent. We also have another special guest with us for this one. Jahannah James is going to join us. Jahannah is an actress and a comedian based out of the UK. Jahannah joined the trip to Egypt in late 2020. She was great fun to be with on the trip. So she also has some personal insights and experiences to relate from these temples. If you haven't seen her work, I'd highly recommend checking out her channel. There's all sorts of content there, but lately she's been making just some excellent videos in the ancient history space and exploring in particular some of the real mysteries and the evidence for ancient high technology. One thing to note about this swapcast was that I did kind of screw up and I forgot to record, or I had my microphone on mute in my recording software when we sat down and did it. Now, thankfully, Kyle and Russ, they recorded me over Zoom and I used their audio to patch this up. But unfortunately, the result is that my audio is a little bit out of sync with my video. You'll notice that it's fine for Kyle and Russ and for Jahannah, but for me, it's a little bit out of sync. I don't think it's a big problem, given that, you know, most of the time we're down as little icons in the screen, but that's pretty much going to be the case for this video, and that continues right up until I think like the last half hour of this, when I finally figured out that, oh, I had the microphone on mute. I hope it doesn't tar the experience too much for anyone out there. I really enjoyed doing this podcast, and I really enjoyed going through and reviewing all of this footage with Jahannah and Kyle and Russ, and I hope you enjoy it as well. I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers. All right, welcome back to the podcast. Really pleased to be here today. Joining me is the Snake Brothers once again. We're doing another video swapcast, and also have a special guest on for this one, Jahannah James. Welcome.
Hello.
Jahannah. Good to see you again. Yes.
Good.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm supposed to talk now. Right. Okay. Yeah, I joined, followed, tagged along with Ben on the Egypt trip. So I'm just going to jump in, and I was basically his little sidekick for the whole time, which was great.
Yes, it was awesome. We met in Egypt on the trip, and then you've also started just a great YouTube channel. I mean, you've always had a YouTube channel and a big following on some other platforms, Instagram and Facebook, but the video work that you've been doing lately has been taking off. Jahannah, you've been producing these great videos from that Egypt trip, but you know, all of the tackling a lot of these topics in ancient history and all of the evidence for ancient high technology. So well done with that. I just wanted to say that I really enjoy your videos. I think they're really fresh and a great perspective on all of these topics, and just a great addition to all of the other content creators that are making this stuff. So well done.
Thank you. I didn't realize how much I filmed until I got back, and that I was like, oh, I'll make a vlog of the trip, and I was like, oh, actually, I'll make 9. Like, there's so much stuff that we saw and that we did.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad there's more people getting into this and thinking about it and producing good content. And totally not jealous that you got to go on the trip. Not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Not jealous at all.
Yep.
Well, I nearly didn't, because England they locked down, and I bought my ticket, and they shut the England. Wow. And they said that no international travel was allowed. So I literally had to go to like the Egyptian embassy and try and like brag it off as like a work trip, and was like, I need to go because I'm an official YouTuber. And they gave me like a visa, and I sort of literally snuck out the country. I felt like
Awesome.
proper Indiana Jones, like,
great.
yes.
That's perfect.
Yes. Media, it's essential.
That's right. That's right.
It is. Yes, this is essential travel, please.
Yeah.
It was. I thought it was. Definitely was.
Yeah, dude, everyone that went there felt like it was essential travel. Just at it was the end of 2020, like the whole trip. We were just about the only. I think we were the only tourist group, certainly with Americans, and I think English and Australian people, and everyone that was there was just, I think, very happy to be doing something at that point, like the end of 2020.
Yeah,
we're all out and about. We're in Egypt together, so it was yeah, really good group of people that were willing to take the risk of traveling and kind of deal with the swings and roundabouts of fate and fortune as they happen, which they did on this trip. Just it was challenging in a few places, but we got through it, and I think it was a great experience. I certainly thought it was just epic.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we watched you guys from afar. You know, the stuff you were putting up on social media, and it was cool to see how much you guys got to see. And of course, now we're seeing the results of it. So I think we should get into it. What are we looking at here? What's going on here?
Let me flip over so everyone can see it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So today we actually are going to look at a fair bit of footage from this trip. Also, some footage from previous trips, but I thought the topic that would be great to have Jahannah, because I know you got a lot out of these sites as well, was to take a look at some of the major temple sites in Egypt, particularly Karnak and Luxor temples. And these are just spectacular temples. I think they have a real mix of obvious dynastic work as well as what I would term kind of the older, builder work with the obelisks and the giant statues and whatnot. Just remarkable sites. And I hadn't had the chance. I mean, I've been there before, but I hadn't really filmed at them. So a lot of this footage is brand new as well, because I mean, this was the first chance I had to go kind of with the good camera gear and get to take a close look at these sites. So I'm kind of interested in going through this footage again myself, because I've only really been through it once or twice before this.
So is this is a model? Is this in a?
No, this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so this is the actual thing.
Yeah, people don't realize how small the dynastic Egyptians were.
Yeah. It's only a model.
Yes. I thought this was interesting. That's just a useful way to start it, because we'll start with Karnak, one of the biggest temple sites still standing, although as big as it is, there were others that were this size, if not larger, although there's not much left of them. Some square kilometers kind of scale. You've got places like Bastet and Tanis, which were equally as big, if not bigger. But these are the ones that are kind of still standing in the upper Egypt, up on the Nile, what they call Upper Egypt. But yeah, so I thought this would be a good little just introduction to it. There's you sort of on the right hand side of this is where we progress through and sort of the tour starts, and then we get into a few different areas on the trip. But I'll roll the video and we can talk about it as we go. But yeah, Karnak's one of the I would term just one of the more spectacular places, one of the places I was looking forward to the most to getting back to.
And what's the standard model, like dates given for beginning and end of construction for this place?
Middle. So it's typically, so things like the great Hypo style hall, which we'll see, they will say is, let me mute that real quick, because some places will listen to the audio, but it's generally like the era of Ramses II, which I think is kind of the middle to late period. So they'll tell you like his father said he started it, and then it was like a hyper-style hall was completed by Ramses II. Same thing at Luxor, although you do have a lot of Old Kingdom objects here. So, and there's Old Kingdom writing even, like there's attributions to it that sort of suggest that this place its roots were far, far older. And I certainly think that's the case too. I think that once again, you have this mix of, dynastic work. So all of this stuff and it was incredible work, like the hyper-style hall. I think a lot of the avenues of sphinxes, these buildings, these giant walls, all dynastic, probably all done in that period, that late period in Egypt. In fact, I do have an image, I think, that talks about the dating as they give it. But, I think, again, it was built on top of what was left from previous constructions and incorporated some of these previous things like obelisks and what were obviously, 1,000-ton single-piece statues, things like the Ramesseum statue. And I know it's right at the end of this, but we found a very interesting piece of a statue that was just mind blowing to me. I'd never seen anything quite like it. And I think it may have been up there with some of the biggest ones in Egypt.
Oh yeah, the toe.
Yes, well, the thumb. This one was the thumb.
The thumb toe, same thing.
Yeah, and it's conglomerate too, which is crazy. Toe, thumb. Yep. Hand, toe. Foot, thumb.
It was some sort of part of a limb that was huge.
It had a big nail on it. Yes.
Yeah.
Big old nail. Yeah, so this is the entryway. So it's the same thing you see at Luxor too, which is kind of interesting in that there's this avenue of I don't know if you officially call these sphinxes. These are ram-headed sphinxes. I think these are rams. And these would go for kilometers. In fact, they have you have the same thing at it was supposedly at the Serapeium. We'll see the same thing at Luxor. And as they keep excavating and making roadworks in these areas, in Luxor, in the town, because that's the other part. Like, these temples are literally in the middle of the city. It's like right on particularly Luxor's right in the middle of a city. It's right on the edge of the Nile, and they keep digging these up, and there's this like massive long avenues of these sphinxes.
You think they indicate Aries, right? Is the age of the processional age of Aries?
Could be. Yeah, I don't know specifically what these rams indicate, or what they're supposedly attributed to. And this is actually interesting.
That's like 2200 BC.
Aries? Yes. So the Moses, essentially. Yeah. So it was that period between up until about.
Yeah, it ends with zero, like Pisces.
Till about 100 BC.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's Pisces. This is an interesting avenue. This is that front avenue. And I've got a clip. We might even skip to it right now, and I'll come back. That's worth listening to of a previous trip here when I was here with Graham Hancock. And this is the avenue. So looking down here around the spring solstice, it's the sun sets directly on top of that pillar that you see right at the end there. And it works for 3 days around the solstice, but it's the whole thing's aligned to the solstice. In fact,
that's amazing.
Before you move it, but I have a construction question here. What are all those like rectangular notches up high? There's a line of them on the left and on the right.
Yeah.
Mounting things up there, possibly?
Probably would be my guess, yeah. So there may have been wooden construction here. This may have been decorated and hung with things. I think when we look at this today, you're lacking all of the color that would have been here, particularly during the dynastic work.
Yeah.
And there's a few sections where you see that. Sorry, Jahannah.
No, just saying you got to hang your clothes somewhere, right? So I'm just imagining.
Yeah, it's a good place to hang clothes.
Yeah. What we were saying about the in Peru
for the Giants.
Alante Tambo, we're talking about these the nubbed clotheslines as well. That's probably what they were for.
Yeah, for sure.
It's practical, isn't it?
Moved on.
It is interesting too, the way the joint there on the two sort of entryway. I don't know what to call them. They're like columns, but they're completely separate from the wall. Whereas you've got that brick
piece here.
Yeah, it's like an extension.
Yeah.
It is.
So that's definitely separated for some reason, if not just different building stages.
Yeah, it's added later, or the entrance was bigger, something.
Maybe, maybe this came later. It does, and because it does look like a different degree of work too, doesn't it? Like this looks like finer work,
or maybe just newer.
Newer, maybe less eroded. I think a lot of this is sandstone. I want to say it's certainly not like granite. There's stacks of. Oh, hello, pup.
So I've got a little puppy here. Sorry, tried to give him treats to keep him quiet, buddy. So he wants to join in, so you can join in.
Welcome. Yeah, more the merrier.
This is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Join the podcast.
Everyone, Egypt videos and Star Wars. Oh my God.
Yeah. I feel like I know we were only there for like 2 weeks, but I feel like fully qualified to talk about different types of stone and timelines now. Like I look at stuff and be like, yeah, this is definitely from an older period. I feel quite good about that now.
Good. Yes.
So I can see what you're saying. This thing here definitely was added later.
It's clear. I mean,
it's clear.
Yeah.
Well, something happened. There's definitely a difference. I think it's representative of the fact that there was lots of periods of building that happened at these sites, and when you look at them, you got to kind of remember that. Let me skip to this real quick. I think here we go. Let me just grab this, and I will play the audio for this because you'll hear Graham Hancock talking about the that avenue that we were looking at.
The one that aligns with the sun.
in great precision. So it's like you take a rifle and you point it, and the sun sits like the bead on the end of the rifle on that archway over there.
Did you witness that?
I have witnessed that, absolutely.
Did Simon take a picture of it?
Oh yes, yeah, we have it in my book, Heaven's Mirror. And it's the alignment actually works for about 3 days before the solstice and 3 days after. So from roughly the 22nd of December through to the 27th or the 8th, you just get this magic that takes place. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And that tells us these guys were just incredible in what they did. They were thinking big in a way that we'd never think of.
So it's a promise to come back then.
There you go.
That's so impressive.
Yeah.
Good trip. Oh, and also I've got some images from here too. There's just so many more people were there a few years back.
Yeah, that's not how we saw it. We thought it was just
No.
ourselves. We had a private tour.
It was great that there was only a few of us there.
There's the thumb.
Yeah, we will get back. We'll get to the thumb at the end of this. Yep. We'll keep the video rolling as we walk down into the hall. But it's kind of starts with these really impressive what they call hypo style halls, which are these the columns that are made from rounds, and they're massive. This is the largest hypo style hall in the world, as far as I know. I think it certainly has that claim. Luxor's pretty big too, but this was incredible work. And again, I think this is generally all work of the dynastics and Ramses and his father.
Yeah. That is enormous.
Well, yeah, this is just the entryway. Once we get to the actual these actual columns and pillars, the scale's kind of breathtaking.
So I see the pockmarks on the lower blocks there, like they're either damaged or they scraped something off there, or they were plastered, and then those look eroded.
Right. Yeah, I suspect there's probably been quite a bit of defacement.
Yeah.
If there was any carvings on this, and then people probably hammering at them. The funny thing is, up until not that long ago, I mean, there were people living in these sites like Karnak and Luxor. They were like essentially tent cities, and people were living in all of these structures. Like they were just piled up with just trash and just debris and like layers of dirt, and they had to excavate all of these. But people have been living here for a long time, and just in and around it. I'm sure using whatever they felt like they needed to use.
Right. Yeah, it's
would.
ready-made structures. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I would too. Yeah,
I'd
it wouldn't
live
be a
there.
bad place to live.
Amazing.
yeah.
It is.
So are these columns made? I mean, they look like they're made of multiple blocks, or
They are.
Yeah.
And plastered.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of modern repair going on here. So like those columns on the left here are modern, and then you have blocks like this, which I think some of this stuff is sort of clues that harkens back to older monuments that were here. And this looks like white calcite to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm,
Oh, nicely cut.
Yeah.
that's mad.
Remember that walking in here. Yeah, so and a lot of this stuff's been repaired. And again, I think all of these blocked works and even these columns, and you see kind of get a little sense of the hyperstyle hall ahead of us here. Definitely dynastic work. But then when it comes to some of these objects, the granite single piece statues, I think these are the ones that may have been either moved around or built around.
So when you're there, did any of the guides or Yusuf or anybody talk about the meaning of the small person below the big statues? Like, what does that mean?
Oh, it was the wife, I think.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I've heard that one.
It was a representation of the wife of, I don't know why she was small.
Because like all the, well, not all of them, but at least some of the, what are they? The ram statues. There's a person standing in front of their paws. So it's like there's some kind of meaning there. I've seen people say it means the soul. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't recall Yusuf saying that. To be honest, I was running around filming a lot and not doing a good job of listening to everything he had to say.
Yeah, Ben would be off.
Yeah.
Get to a site, Ben's off. He's doing a perimeter check.
I had some objectives to get to. I'd just been to a few of these places and I'd heard. But yeah, there was, I like this. This is like a granite graveyard. I think some giant pieces of obelisks. And again, you can see clearly hand cut glyphs in a lot of these cases. This was probably attached with bronze. There was you sort of see some of the green tinges in some of these. It's good work, but it's definitely hand done work. I think obviously work done by the dynastics, and then they would in a lot of cases fill in some of these with metals, and obviously all the metals long.
Right.
And this looks like a piece of an obelisk to me, like one of the many, many obelisks. This would have been a forest of obelisks, of these giant obelisks. And the funny thing is too, like, so look at the height of it. And this is like the width of it. This is pretty typical for the obelisks you find here. And this is something that'll happen in a video at some point, but there's that scene on the wall at Saqqara. There's a causeway at Saqqara, and then on the wall, they've got this picture of a boat with these obelisks on the deck. And there's like, see, this is how they transported the obelisks from the quarry at Aswan to all these places. Yeah. But the obelisks are like less than half the height of a standing person. And they're like maybe a fifth or a sixth the size of some of these. And it's a different kettle of fish trying to move one of these pieces than those other things. But they take that one scene and they say, yes, see, they floated all these obelisks down on barges. But I mean, these are so much mightier than the little obelisks that are shown on that depiction at Saqqara that gets used as there I go, putting my fingers into holes again. You got to do it. Yep.
I would not want to be on a boat that was taking one of these things down a river. No way.
No, it's a scaling problem, like you're saying, Ben. I think this is the same problem that is. I think he's getting serious there. I think this is the same problem with modern attempts to do certain things, like with this megalithic stuff. It's a scaling problem. They'll do it with a small block, and they'll say, "See, it can be done."
Right.
But moving heavy weights it doesn't scale up in a linear fashion. It's
my posture is awful. Stand up straight, girl. I remember what Youssef was saying here. He was talking about, it was either this one or the one before. He was saying that there were literally two names that were on the same obelisk. Like one had written that, and they both claimed that they had made it. So it was proof that people were just tagging this thing. Yeah. And it was more than likely that neither of them had actually made it.
That happened a lot. Let's see if I've got let's see if you can hear it again. This camera, man. I like the footage, but the microphone on it's awful, but maybe we can hear what he's saying here. Let me try.
But you still need a hard steel. I mean, you cannot do
not steel, in my opinion. Stone.
But stone, can you do this with stone bit short?
Diamond is a stone.
Yeah, of course.
Beryl is a stone. Corundum is a stone.
But a power tool,
same like they did it with
operating.
This one?
No.
No.
Oh, I thought you said there was indication of power.
No, this is the result of a hand work.
Yeah. And I know you've been emphasizing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is all the work here hand? By hand? Is all of the...
No.
The hieroglyphs, though.
Dun, dun, dun.
Here we find again, this is part of a statue, as you can see, and here is the belt with no name.
Yeah, so he's
the added lip.
Yeah, the objects themselves.
Right. So let me clarify what he's saying. So it's interesting. It's because it's a subtle point. There's a couple things, but when he was talking about the glyphs, the owl glyph here, like that was the question. Like Stefan was asking, like can you use a stone chisel to get this result by hand on granite? And Yusuf saying yes, you can use corundum or flint or something that's harder than granite. And no doubt the dynastic Egyptians developed this capability. They were very good at it. You can see that work. The difference is in some of the objects themselves. So it's those flat machined faces. It's the saw cuts. It's the other. You don't see the evidence for power tools or these advanced tools in the hieroglyphs themselves. And Yusuf, he's seen everything. He pretty much contends that he has not seen any of the glyphs, even the really good ones, which are absolutely beautiful, that represent sort of power tools or advanced tooling. So he thinks that all of those were done by hand, as opposed to the objects themselves, which then he spins around and points at a statue that has, a belt on it, but the belt doesn't have any names on it. Where, in most cases you see names written into these belts or on the statues. And again, a much cruder form of work compared to the object itself. So you see that a lot on a lot of these sites, and particularly on these giant megalithic blocks that, it fits to me, it fits that the idea that these were inherited objects that were then modified and written on later, and that became the writing, and everything became a high art form. And there's even some subtlety and nuance in a couple of objects and shapes and glyphs that I think may have been incorporated as original objects. And we'll get to that when we get to the Luxor side. But yeah, I just he's making a good point about the
so the hieroglyphs, even these, very nicely done, deeply cut ones, could be done with basically primitive tools by hand, was what he's saying.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
It became a high art form. And by this time with Ramses, I mean, you had probably likely schools of stonecutters, and they became very, very good at it. And you'll see on some of these obelisks, they just look remarkable, like beautiful work.
By the way, this is the granite relief that transformed into this shape oddly, very odd. The extent of minerals, because you see lots of granite, broken pieces of granite, and these are the pillars from white kalcite crystal. But most of what's standing is sandy stone. So these are obviously.
And all that rubble's just lying there in the courtyard?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It's like a graveyard there. It's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah. Granite graveyard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as he said, there's everything else is sandstone, but there's this granodiorite and objects like this. We'll see some really interesting effects into some of the stones. Something happened here. Like there was.
Yeah.
There's
heavily damaged for sure.
Right. Yeah. And some of it's actually changed on almost a molecular level. Like there's something happened to some of this granite and some of these objects that changed the property of the stone. Like there's whether it was from its original purpose and use, if it was somehow activated, I don't know. I can't, but there's definitely something weird happened here.
It like melted from the inside out. It's so weird.
Wow.
You're like, what was going through that granite that made it melt?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And if you look closer, you can see the roughness on those glyphs, and it's it is hand tool. It is tool done. I like to use the box and the Serapeum as an example because it's so obvious that the writing such poor work. But you do have plenty of examples of very good writing, but it still doesn't quite hit that power tool.
Yeah.
It's like Toy Story and Andy. It's like there are these amazing toys, and then you see Andy written on the bottom, and you're like, oh, Andy made it. The whole thing. No.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yep.
Are those jars and bowls right there? Is that what that was on the wall?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, there's a whole, this is the section that I hadn't seen before. And actually I wanted to talk about that. I saw this and I had to go over and take a look at it. The door shape. This is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And again, written on, but this is a shape that is drawn everywhere. There's one of these drawn on the boxes in the Serapeum. There was in the Serapeum, there's two massive granite steles with that shape on either side of every box, in every alcove, much bigger than this, but granite, and they've since all been quarried, but these were inset into the walls. And you see this everywhere. And no doubt, and in the museum, there's lots of these blocks that show this shape. And then what's interesting is you have some resonance chambers on the Giza Plateau that have this shape, and these are the rooms that form standing waves, and they have some savage acoustic properties. And I think this shape had something to do with the functional nature of what was going on, and it was something that was then ceremonially adopted by the dynastic Egyptians and replicated. They drew it on everything. They would imitate they'd even paint stone a granite color and draw the shape on it in later periods.
Can you capture a photo of that thing straight on for me?
Yes, I will.
So I remember we were talking about what kinds of drugs would maybe open that portal. How many? What would you have to take to get through that door?
Just tap on it. Come on.
You have to play the right kind of trumpet.
Yeah, you got to play the right kind of note. That's for sure.
So did you
speak friend and enter?
Yeah,
didn't try that.
There was a really fine carving of like the trim on the top of that doorway thing.
Mm-hmm.
The little vertical lines that go across what looks like a crown molding or something.
Yep.
Is that also hand tooled, like the hieroglyphs?
Not sure. I'd have to take a close look at it. I see if I've got some pictures of it.
Because it looks like part of the actual, design of the door itself.
Yeah, it may have been.
There was like a square bathtubby thing that we just panned along, and that Yusef said that he thinks that's machine cut, and you tap it and it sounds like metal.
Oh wow!
It's really,
Over here.
yeah, it was back along the lines of the pots. He was like playing on it like drums, and it sounded like a steel pan, but it was made of stone.
Oh, there it is. Wow.
Wow.
That thing there, yeah. He thinks that is
Machine,
not by hand. Yeah, machine cut.
Yeah, you see that in a few different places. Like there's some sort of resonant property with the stone. It's very strange. Like it rings. There's I know of examples at Abu Sir. In fact, there's a we didn't see it on this trip, and maybe they've moved it, because they have moved stuff around since I was here last, which was 2015. I want to say 16 maybe, and at these temples anyway. But there's also like an obelisk at the end. They rope it off, but it's like the 15 feet of the tip of an obelisk. And if you go up and slap that thing, it rings like a bell. Like you put your like ting, it resonates. You hit this obelisk, and it's just unbelievable.
Well, I don't want to be too big of a scriptard here, but that rectangular thing was sitting on two, I don't know, wooden blocks or something. So it's suspended, and with any say crystalline object or whatever, if you move those things, if they're resting on what would be natural nodal points or nodal lines in the natural vibration of the object, then it's going to resonate.
Yeah.
So if you moved it off of one of the nodal lines, like shifted it over a few inches, it may deaden the sound.
Yes. No, I understand.
Like
yeah.
A xylophone, the key is a solid block of metal, and it sits on two rails, and they're very specifically designed proportionately to the keys. That's why they
get wider.
They widen out as the keys get.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and I'm not the ringing of the stones. I feel like I understand that's the same thing. Like you can probably, it depends on how it's balanced and whether it'll resonate. That's a natural property of some of the types of stones. It's just,
for sure.
It's an interesting when you come across it.
We have flint here that we find big flint pieces. It's trapped in the limestone. If you can get it out, and if you can set it up on something where it's not, it's not like basically laying on the ground. If you hit it with your hand, it rings like a bell. Some of them do, not all the time, but it's amazing. It's just natural pieces of stone. So it's that lithophonic property it seems like sometimes they looked for it,
Yeah.
It's certainly that property of the stone seemed important, particularly in the coffers or whatever, the boxes. So this whole area was kind of interesting that we're getting into. This is white calicites. So these structures that are left that were made from this sort of crystalline stone, or travertine or I don't know what you use, alabaster, I guess.
Travertine or alabaster, that's beautiful.
And these are beautiful, and I think this was not normally accessed. Like there's some very fine hieroglyphs that you probably shouldn't be having your hand on the wall. But this is some machine. There's definitely machine cuts,
like this guy.
Right. I think Yusuf told us don't touch, but
wow.
And then, so I wanted to point this out too, that these structures appear to have been machined, and in fact, there are overcuts in the edges of the walls that you'll see here, and you can see kind of how well machined this is too, and the crystal structure of the stone. But you also have a lot of these areas where there are pretty clear overcuts from whatever tool they were using. To make it. So,
and so was that a mortar joint that you just passed, or I
think it's probably a modern repair.
Okay. So when you were first approaching the building, it looked like you could see mortar maybe, or was that just another aspect
modern
of the
repairs?
stone?
Yeah.
I think it's restoration. Yeah, modern restoration. This stuff here, I suspect this is. Yeah, I think this is all modern. This is like all.
Is this thing supposed to have been cut from a single piece of material, and it's restored, or are those blocks?
Yes. Well, the roof definitely was all one piece. It's been put back together in slots, but originally he said it was all one piece of granite, the roof for sure. So, yeah,
alabaster, yeah. It was. We didn't spend a lot of time here, but this was a very interesting spot. And again,
What's
it just
it for?
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, I'm interrupting.
What's it for?
Yeah,
beats me.
Oh, well, Yusuf says he goes, it's not impossible that the chambers were like on the original site and they were just pure cut crystal boxes that resonated, and then the Egyptians came and put all the glyphs inside.
Yeah.
And that made sense. They did have a nice resonance to them. We were sort of humming and trying to start a choir in there.
Awesome.
They do, and you see, you have that you have big crystal boxes underneath some of the pyramids. So there's a huge yellow quartzite. It's a very rare type of stone. There's a massive box that's underneath the Maidum pyramid, which you can't get to anymore because of the water table. But Petrie found it. It weighs something like 70, 80 tons, and it's a big sort of, they call it obviously a burial chamber, but it's all like one single piece of this yellow crystal that's underneath the Maidum pyramid.
And it's the same as the calcite that's been ripped out of the pyramids and buried, right?
Yep. Same.
So
That's right.
They've recently just hidden all of this crystal that was inside of a pyramid. And I'm like,
yeah,
I may have a small piece of it in my luggage.
Uh-oh.
Didn't hear that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we should take a break. Cut that part.
They were burying it.
They were.
I was like, I got to save a piece of history here. If they're trying to wipe that off the history books.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, we will get into that when we come back from a break.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be right back. And we are back. Second segment. Brothers of the Serpent, UnchartedX, and Jahannah James. Glad to have you with us. And this is fantastic. It's great hearing both of you guys' perspective from the trip.
Yeah.
So, where are we going next? What are we looking at?
Fresh. We're going to continue at Karnak. We still have, we'll keep this rolling at Karnak because there's a lot more to see here yet. We're like we said, we're off in these crystalline halls that are kind of off to the side. There's something of a granite table and these extremely high quality glyph work that's been done on top of them. Some of this stuff is obviously in high relief, so it's just incredible work. But this has all been done on top of these, possibly single piece alabaster or white calcite chambers, if you like.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, you're right. It is high relief.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that actually reminds me on what we were talking about in the last break, or just before the last break, which was where they have actually been hiding and burying calcite. So, Jahannah, you were talking about underneath the pyramid. Specifically, it's the step pyramid. It is the subject of my next proper video that I'm working on, which I am going to get done. But there's so they found like 70 or 80 tons of white calcite beneath the step pyramid, and they pretty much pulled it all up out of there and they buried it as landfill. And there's chunks and pieces of it that have tube drills in it and machine cuts, like really high quality stone. And for whatever reason, they piled it up all behind the step pyramid and then they buried it. They bulldozed it and they buried it in this huge rubble field that's behind the step pyramid.
To preserve it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah, officially that's the official story. They dragged it up outside the pyramid and they buried it in the sand to preserve it.
Yeah.
No, doesn't fly with me.
No.
And you conspiracy theory.
Well, I think
it's.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, you go. What's your conspiracy? We'll compare conspiracy theories.
Well, I think it's anything that, in some cases, I think stuff that isn't matching the mainstream narrative gets buried, gets dismissed, gets pushed away, and I think a lot of this stuff was machined. I mean, we found little pieces of it, and I've got pictures of it, and it's perhaps another site that we can look at on one of these swapcasts, and it will be in my upcoming video. But clear tubular drills and machine cuts and just perfect flats. So like this work, it wasn't done by hand. There's all sorts of stuff, and you dig back through the history books. There's all sorts of things that have been written about these chambers, these crystal chambers beneath the step pyramid. So I'm not really sure why they did it, but I suspect if there was a reason, that may have been it. It's like, well, this is something we can't explain, so we're going to remove it and just get it out of the
and preserve it. Yeah.
Preserve it by smashing it up and then burying it with a bulldozer. Like,
Right.
okay, makes perfect sense.
That is the same theory that I came upon myself.
Okay, I was going to ask.
I can.
Two experts have confirmed.
We've confirmed. Yeah, it totally seems like that. Like the theme through all the sites were that especially the pyramids, they just seem to be so functional. And I think that now that that story is coming out and people are clicking that sound resonance and vibrations have something to do with these structures, I do think that they are just dusting away anything that would potentially, once people start scanning this stuff and doing proper tests, they're just quickly hiding it in the back garden. Nothing to see here, just a tomb.
Right.
That's a it's a very good point, because we'll see a bit more of that at Luxor, and some of it's been done in the name of restoration and repair, which is interesting because there's been some massive changes at Luxor that we'll get into when we hit that site. But yeah, and to some extent it's removed some of the ability to actually question some of the mainstream narrative, and we'll get to it when we get there. But some of the obvious evidence for absolute precision and symmetry is now well and truly out of our reach in terms of taking a close look at it, put it that way. And I'll explain that more when we get to Luxor. But so this is the hyper-style hall. It's incredibly impressive. Again, these are columns made up of rounds. Again, I think this was all work done by the dynastics and Ramses and his father, or that dynasty, or they finished it and then was written all over. Very impressive. Again, all sandstone. But almost imitation of the columns that you see, some columns like this made of solid granite at some other sites.
Does it seem to you like I've never been able to figure this out, but of course I haven't been there. I've only looked at videos and pictures, but it seems like they put the columns really close to each other. Like there's, is that right? Like it seems like it's tight space down there. I know it's a wide hall, but the columns are so big that they appear to be really close to each other, which is a strange thing to me. And I wonder if it was if the measurements between columns is something other than structural. Like look how many of them there are and how close they are to each other.
Yeah.
Well, it seems, I mean, if you're going to top the whole thing with stone,
maybe you do need it.
You got to have enough support. I don't know.
There's some big blocks of stone. I mean, they lifted up some pretty heavy blocks of sandstone up there. And also the artwork in here, and particularly on the underneath, and at the end of this, I've got some images and some close-ups of some of the artwork that's underneath. There's George Howard. Underneath on the undersides that still have color, and there's beautiful color on these glyphs, and it gives you like a little glimpse into what this place must have been like in its in the dynastic times when it was just drawn. So this is kind of where we get into what I would call a more interesting section of Karnak, where you have the giant obelisks still standing, some of the granite objects that I think are a real juxtaposition to the hyper-style hall and the stuff that came later.
Yeah.
So I was going to tell you that I went to the Vatican, and after we spent some time in Italy and saw various different obelisks in Rome, and then when we went to the Vatican, I saw that obelisk, and I was like, this looks like it was made out of concrete or something. It was like, I didn't know anything about it.
About the one in the square, the St. Peter's.
Yeah.
Okay.
The square. Yeah.
Yeah, it had no hieroglyphs on it, and that was one of the main things that I was, of course I didn't know at the time, but it was actually real.
Yeah.
But
it was blank.
Yeah, it was completely blank. And my question is, do you think that they were all like that, and that the Egyptians, the dynastic Egyptians, came along and carved the stuff into all of them, or is there?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that too.
Yeah, that's what I think happened. I think they were written on, and then in some cases many times overwritten as well. I do think they're and I'll get to this when we there's a good example at Luxor, but I think there is some of these shapes. In fact, this is a massive.
Look at it, it's a beast.
God, this is gigantic.
It's one piece of rock.
Yeah,
it just like.
What? Yeah, and the one that was at the Vatican was just massive.
So the Vatican managed to get their hands on an unaltered
one. That's what I'm saying. So it's like whoever.
That's an original.
Yeah,
that's an original
one that hadn't been messed with.
They knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah. This one obelisk is 800 tons. This one here. This one's around 800 tons, I think. This is the Hatshepsut, I think they call it, the Hatshepsut obelisk. So there's some of the so again, we'll get into it, but I think some of the circles with the dots in some places and on statues may have been original markings.
Okay.
that because they are different, and they're the only symbols that I've seen that are both polished and look like that it's possible they were done with tools. And some better examples of it later that we'll get into in more detail. But this is like one that's cut off. So there would have been avenues of these. There was a couple left standing now, but there was likely dozens of these obelisks at these sites. So it's, it gives an idea of the sort of scale and how much stone they pulled out of the quarries and made these things. It's not just one or two. It was probably several dozen, and not just here.
I wonder what did the damage to the corners up so high too.
Yeah, right.
They couldn't have fallen over because that would have broken the whole thing, right? So
maybe the other obelisks that fell over and hit them.
There you go.
So the one at the Vatican weighs 326 tons.
Whoa.
Wow.
And it's sometimes called Caligula's.
Right.
But yeah, they say that, I'm just reading this little article here, but they're like, no one knows which pharaoh ordered its construction because it doesn't have any hieroglyphs on it.
Of course.
Yeah, right. Anyway, we tell because they always write the name on them. Funny that.
Yeah.
Never mind that they've been written over a bunch of times, and we talked about that earlier too. Like there is obvious evidence here. I get a whole video on it at Tanis, where there's so many occasions where these obelisks have been written over, and you have guys like Ramses that carve their hieroglyphs very deeply to make sure that it's real hard to erase his name because he spent so much of his time erasing other people's names. Yeah. And so this is interesting. This is an overcut into some of the granite. I'm going to back that up a bit then look at that again. So this is like a saw cut that's like very vertical, like straight, narrow beam that it's, again, doing this by hand takes hours and hours and hours of grinding and trying to cut this stuff with a hand tool. You simply do not make overcuts. You'd have to be here for a day or two sawing away to make an overcut, but using power tools, you make overcuts. So this is like you can almost see where it's been backed out here.
Yeah. It's gone,
and started again, right? And how to explain this with the whole hand tool hypothesis. And again, this is all rose granite.
Also, this was like the granite, and then there was a wall of like sandstone or limestone and next to it. And it was like they'd added the sandstone and then they tried to do glyphs over the whole thing, but they couldn't do it very well in the granite, but perfectly in the sandstone. So it looked like it looked like they definitely, like, the granite was there before, it was old, and they tried to like smush it onto a building and include it, but they couldn't get it uniform.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
because that is sandstone to the left, and this was mixing them
stones
together.
Now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and it does look like they tried to do a good job of matching it, but couldn't quite.
They couldn't
pull it off.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. This is kind of the center part of Karnak, Granite Chamber, with a very strange granite box that has this lid that's kind of inset to it. That's you can tell it's like this giant lid on top of this box for whatever reason, but it's inside a whole big granite chamber. And this is, again, likely all original, functional for whatever reason. But I think Yusuf was commenting. Let me see if there's any sound here. Just me mumbling, probably. No.
It looks heavily damaged, that lid. Or
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they made it that way, but there's like giant scoops on the edges of it, the corners.
Yep. Yeah, it's been smashed apart. I mean, maybe it's somebody looking for something in there eventually. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, this massive granite chamber, reminiscent of kind of the King's Chamber. Yep. There's our guy with the MP5. Our suit. He was cool.
Chilling.
That's another guy.
But yeah, look at those, like these things there. They just look like something out of Space Age, the year 3000. They're more impressive when they don't have things written on them. I think it freaks me out. It's like, why does that look so modern, but it's one of the oldest things in there.
Yeah, I think it's diorite too. I think this might be a big diorite piece. Like, it's incredible.
And it's like one piece.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's the hardest way to make a door. Get a giant stone and cut all the way through it.
Two different openings too. It's wow, that's incredible.
Let's see if there's any noise because we're getting into some real interesting stuff here.
Concrete.
Yeah.
It's cracked. Oh, so he's
No, I was talking to you guys.
Okay.
Here's a very large. He's probably the largest tube drill that I've ever seen. It's probably the largest one on record. Into rose granite. This one's probably like 8-9 inches diameter. Humongous tube drill, and you can kind of see it's got that lip at the back end. So it was a hollow tube drill that was made this cut into the rose granite. So just a giant tube drill. It has these strange markings that have been done after the tube was cut out. And again, we see this a lot where we see half of the hole, because I think this block was quarried later, and people were looking for these holes because it gives you a better chance of splitting the granite along the axis of the hole. So we end up with this half a hole. I'm sure if we looked at the back of this block, there'd be quarry marks on it. I have some more pictures of that later. We'll come back to it when we hit the end of the video section.
You can see on the wide shots just how weird the obelisks do look. Like they don't fit with the rest of Karnak. The rest of Karnak is beautiful, soft sandstone that's made up of loads of little pieces. And then they've got these huge blocks. Precise. I can see how I feel like they were there before and everything else was built around them.
Mm. Yeah, I really get the same sense. In a lot of these places, I think they're all the remnants of what was left, and then they became sacred sites.
Yeah, that looks incredibly ancient.
Yeah,
unlike the rest.
It's super damaged, right? Like very, very, very much damaged. And some of this may have been just defacing and hammering, and you can see the green tinge on things from copper and bronze that were likely inset. It must have been beautiful, but yeah, obviously all that metal's long since been removed and reused. So this is back into the main granite chamber.
God, look at those ceiling blocks.
Yeah.
They're enormous. Yeah.
You did look up and go, please not today. After thousands and thousands of years, don't be the one.
It would be the end.
Man,
I mean, what a way to go.
That damage on the walls is really strange to me.
Yeah. Wait for it. Wait, this next clip here that we're going to get to in a second, and we'll have some audio for this, so we'll listen to what Yusuf has to say.
The idea of a box was there. This is not a sarcophagus. This is not even something that has to do with any barrier. Here on the east side, this is supposed to be 10 indicated to the letters, not accumulated information. Yet here they put another device on both sides, and the device is not a single solid piece, but it's a box with a lid.
Yeah, he's basically saying that the whole idea of a box with a lid, this wasn't a burial, this wasn't a sarcophagus, this wasn't ever meant to be anything like that. So why wasn't it, if it was just a table, why wasn't it a single solid piece? But no, it's yet again another box with a lid. Yeah. And I kind of want to set this up for the next part, because you talked about damage to walls. We're about to see something that's really strange. I can't explain it. It's some specific, it's like black granite, and it's an area that was locked off. We got some special access to kind of sneak in there and take a close look at it. And I'll leave the volume on, so hopefully you can hear what Yusuf's saying. I know it's going to be a little out of sync for you guys while you're watching it, but it should be okay. But it's just a really interesting part of Karnak that I definitely wanted to get back to, and we did take a close look at it, and this is something I want to get into in the future.
All right.
Here, the geological anomaly that both Robert Schoch and Susan Moore didn't know. These are two of the best geologists alive in the world. And they didn't know what the hell happened to this thing. So it became a restricted area once we brought attention to it. So the
Did you hear that? It became a restricted area once they brought attention to this. And he has been quizzing Susan Moore and Robert Schoch about this, who are geologists, and they don't know what the hell happened to the stone here. They don't have any explanation for it. And again, like you said, it was only after that Yusuf and his groups drew attention to this, it became a restricted area. But we kind of got in there and had a look. Jump on the fence here.
It looks like
is still changing.
Go
Now
ahead.
that first
I can't really tell, but it looks like it was. Oh, I can't see what the direction of the damage is. But it looks like it was plastered with something and it's falling off.
Speaking force
Look at
or
this.
damage
It's all
that
smashed
was
up.
going
It's
to
all
cause
cracked.
the granite to break to crack like this was going to cause it to fall apart or to fall down, but it didn't. Why? The result here is from an extent that happened in the minerals of the stone. This is probably what happened. But what caused it? Can this happen naturally? I asked this to whom? Susan Moore, my geology teacher, and Dr. Robert Chuck. And we saw a similar example in one of the studies, and then the explanation was on it that said the extent of the stone happened because they moved the stone from its quarry to a different location. That of course didn't make any sense to Dr. Robert Chuck, and he actually laughed at this. I showed him this, but here is a broken piece, and of course Susan Moore, my teacher, when I talked to her about this, she said like, here we find the stone. Here we find a piece of the stone and another piece, and we can look. We can look at this, and really it's amazing because it's conclusive evidence that this transformation happened after this slab of stone was shaped. So it's not just the difference in geologic order or anything like that. Remember, I consulted.
So it's as if the stone is kind of melted from the inside out. There's something that has changed to the mineral in the stone. Like this is a big piece of granite.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's something very odd that's happened to it. And really, like you said, Shock and Susan Moore don't really have any explanation for it.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, the other interesting thing is that the hieroglyphs probably would have been carved before that happened.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, would they really try
like that,
hand hammering all of that into a shattered stone? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's a good point. Don't you?
My theories are all blown out now.
On this subject. So we can see that this level is still in its good condition all around. But the core is what changed. Became two different materials. It's not evidence to geothermal, by the way, because we know where the quarry of granite stone came from.
As a clear little disclaimer there, like it's not evidence of geopolymer because we know where the quarry is that this stone came from.
Okay.
And the same case here. So when the inner core, for some reason, extended, these cracks appeared on the surface. And this can happen long time ago, but then for the stone to keep like expanding and cracking, this can take also thousands of years. Can this happen naturally? Yeah, from like through the last ice age, when the cold and heat
Yeah, so I think it's possible maybe when we look at the writing that this transformation may have started inside the stone and then it took time to develop. That maybe it didn't happen until after the writing was done. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're right. I'm sure that the writing must have been done before the like at least the cracks on the surface emerged.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like granite at all. I mean, that is really weird. It looks, I mean, decomposed granite.
Yeah,
maybe.
it does look like decomposed granite. But it's you're right though, and he's right. He's pointing out that the basically there's an exterior
veneer
on what looks like a totally changed inner core.
Yeah.
Yep.
People on my YouTube were saying, well, it's obviously that they've put like a case on the outside. I'm like, no, trust me, it's like one rock.
Yeah.
It's just completely changed on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like the what we're calling a veneer is thicker on the sides on the piece that we were looking at there.
Yeah. In some cases it's thicker. Yeah.
It's like maybe a half-inch thick in some places and 2 inches thick in other places. It's strange.
Please say you nicked that.
No.
Have you got? Oh, damn it!
No,
we could have done tests.
I didn't bring anything back. I didn't. Yeah, there's bits and pieces everywhere. That'd be cool. Yeah, I'd like to see somebody do some more detailed testing on it. But it seemed to happen in this area to everything here. And
Here we
yeah,
are socially distancing.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so that does look like those little pieces of gravel there. That's
decomposed granite.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like dust, granite dust.
Yep. How they do the decomposition, you know, when they're making it.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that.
No idea.
No idea.
Crumbling.
Yeah, it's crumbling apart. Yeah.
Wow.
We should look it up because you can buy this stuff. I'm sure they
Decomposed granite. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably treat it somehow, or I don't know. Maybe they quarry it like that.
No, that's what I was thinking. Is they found it like that?
They find it like that.
I have no idea.
Well, there's got to be a process.
This was a major discovery. I think we figured out how they move some of these blocks around. You can.
Nice lift you got there.
Yeah. Seriously.
Wasn't there was a crane at Karnak, but it did it break or fall out? No, something happened about.
There was a big like tower crane. It was all just bent and smashed. Yeah. I don't know where that was. You're right, but yeah, this is like
I remember hearing about a crane, and they were trying to move something with a crane, and it broke the crane. And I was like, yeah, okay, so people did this with ropes and sticks. Yeah, okay, cool.
Right. Logs, exactly. Yeah, and this thing wouldn't have been capable. Like that's a nice crane, but it wouldn't have been capable of lifting anything like these obelisks. I mean, that's
no, not even close.
No shot. Yeah, so there's the tip of an obelisk laying down. I think this may have been the one that you slap on it and it rings. Wow. But yeah, there would again avenues of obelisks. There's also a large pond. A lake. It was the man-made lake.
Oh, did you see the weird trees at Karnak that grow like horizontally?
I think we're about to.
Oh, we're going to come up to them. Okay, they're pretty cool.
Sure are.
There's a big crane.
Yeah, that's a big crane, right?
It's one of the big cranes.
There's one of those that was busted. I remember this being like super warm.
It was quite hot.
Let's see if we can.
Oh, that's the biggest beetle. The biggest.
Oh yeah, the large scarab. Yeah,
the scarab. Yeah, if you walk around it 7 times, you get pregnant. So I didn't do that.
Yeah, I didn't. I stayed well and truly away from that.
We both stayed well away. Both didn't want to get pregnant.
Rose granite and then quartzite as well. Some people by mistake call it diorite. It's called the tunalite, according to the correction that was after the research of my teacher, the geologist Susan Moore. Tunalite is a type of granite stone with high quartz content. Makes it more solid than the rose granite. And that makes sense when they used it to make the pounders. They used to split or recycle from the stone, which of course the dynastic Egyptians, the Egyptologists believe it was the pounders that was used to scoop and to crush the stones around.
Yeah, beautiful piece. And again, that's made from the material that they make pounding stones out of, that they say were the things that we used to cut out the granite.
Right.
Quarry.
I love that leg. What a leg. Like,
yeah.
You can see all the muscles. He's done leg day. It's beautiful. I love that piece of, might be one of my favorite bits of statue.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, you see the tendons. This is again that you see this in a lot of the like the Khafra enthroned, a few of the statues.
It's great.
Absolute precision, like just mastery of stone that isn't reflected if you look closely in the hieroglyphs that are on it as well. Like you have these beautifully polished statue, and you have these hand carved, and chiseled in precise hieroglyphs. And you look closely at any of these objects, and you'll see that as well. Particularly the really hard ones. You see that they really struggled to make indentations into them.
Yeah, it does look like kids had a go. Not to be rude to the artiste, but
yeah.
Also, I remember going to one of the museums after and seeing a statue which had legs about the same size, and I was like, wait, when did this statue was made? What time period? And Yusuf was like, oh, that's a lot later. And these legs were so bad; they were just like basically I feel like I could have carved them. Like, it was really not very good. And then I just remembered that one at Karnak, and I was like, how come the one that was made like dynasties before was so good, and then they just lost the ability to carve an ankle?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, so we're coming up to the end of the video footage here for Karnak, and there is the thing that I think is a real highlight. And Jahannah, those trees, I think we're coming up on those, but
the trees.
The real highlight for me is this the remnants of what was a conglomerate single piece statue, and there was likely several of these at Karnak. Let's just skip this forward a little bit. Yeah.
So just when you think it can't get big enough, it just gets bigger.
Yeah, this here was just insane.
There it is. The thumb. There definitely was a thumb.
Yeah. So this is like the thumb. Somebody's holding something. You see his thumbnail, and it's like those seated or standing statues, perhaps, and it's made from conglomerate, which is a much harder stone to work than simply just granite, because you see the chunks of flint in it, and I think flint's like an 8. You use flint to carve granite. This has a lot of flint in it, and this has been made from it. And this is on a scale of the same sort of Colossi of Memnon size statue, if not even a little bit bigger. So I think you're easily topping 1,000 tons with what this original statue would have originally been like, and it would have been a single piece.
The difference in the fine details, like this is this very fine carving of the fingernail versus the rough carving of the glyphs that come later, and then the glyphs are how we attribute it and how we date and relate the object. But this is also a very difficult stone to carve, just with the different types of materials in it.
Wood that have knocks in it and stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah. You got pieces of flint and other things that are 7 and 8 on the Mohs scale. I've not seen this piece before. It's awesome.
Yeah. So reiterate that it's the nail itself and the lines of it is obviously like the way that's been carved is a much finer quality than the glyphs that have been added to the bit on top of it. So
and I've seen the statues, they're holding what looks like a short handle of something, but it doesn't have anything coming out of either side, right? It's like this strange.
Yeah.
It's the shamir. It's the whatever.
Shamir.
Yes. Yeah, that's what it is.
That's what it is. It's a lightsaber.
Yeah,
basically.
you turn it on, and it's a lightsaber blade, and then you can cut whatever you want. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It looks like that meme. There's a meme going around the internet of someone with an angry fist that's just like this, and it just reminded me of a big meme.
Yep. Just carving memes out of stone.
First memers.
That's right.
Indeed.
There were no low-effort memes back then.
Yeah, so it's super impressive, and I think there could have been multiple of those statues, like as much as they were at Tanis. You see them at Luxor. We would have had them at obviously at Colossi of Memnon. You know, the Ramesseum. So not just massive obelisks, but also these massive single-piece statues, of which there are only barest chunks of them left. But yeah, that thumb, I'd love to see the proportionality of that thumb sort of looked at and analyzed.
Yeah.
Did you say the Colossi of Memnon?
Memnon. Colossi of Memnon. That's right.
Memnon. There we are. That's me doing my work, my professional hunting, ancient technology hunting.
Yep.
I mean, if you're into foot fetishes, Karnak is the place. There's just toes everywhere.
There are a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot of feet at Karnak.
Yeah,
it's an insider tip.
Yeah. Don't tell everyone.
It was a secret. Damn.
All right, let's take another break. We're up at the next break.
All righty.
All right.
Be right back.
Yeah.
Be right back. Hi guys, welcome back. We're now into the third segment.
That's right.
Of the show. Yes. And we're all still here. We're all still going. And we've just left Karnak and we're about to visit. Where are we going next, Ben?
Luxor Temple.
Luxor.
An evening visit to Luxor Temple, which is often how it's done. Although I do have some footage from the daytime as well from a previous trip there that we're going to use to juxtapose some of it as well. But it's
all right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So Luxor's similar area. Like, I mean, Karnak's at Luxor. It's not that far away. They're both super famous. In fact, so this one is very interesting as well, because I don't know if you guys have dug into this on your show or anything, but Schwaller de Lubitz and his whole Temple of Man. This is Luxor. So he wrote a book on it. There's a very detailed analysis of its proportion. I spent a lot of time there measuring it, and it reflects you know, the cosmos. It reflects the fundamentals of nature, the dimensions of humans. There's all sorts of complexities in the actual measurements and the I guess the proportionality of the way this temple's laid out. So interesting spot. I need to dig more into that actually at some point. But
yeah, I want to dig into his actual book because there is an English version of it now, right? But we've gone through John Anthony West's, you know, Serpent in the Sky, which is where he was basically trying to condense it and look through all that. And yeah, it was some very interesting stuff that he came up with. And of course,
Indeed.
John Anthony West does a good job of trying to explain it. But some of the philosophy went over my head.
Right.
But yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah. So and I'll set this up before we roll too. So this is the front entrance to the temple. It looks kind of weirdly small in the scale of this image, but it's not. There's another giant obelisk in front here. There was a second one. And you have these huge statues that are in front. And in fact, this is where a lot of the changes that have happened over recent years at Luxor, which we'll get into. The audio on this is much better than the others. I used a different camera for this nighttime stuff, but I'll cut it in and out as appropriate. Let's just see. And again, there's I think this will take a second for you guys, but a long avenue of sphinxes.
Oh yeah.
That lead up to it.
These are the two pieces that used to be damaged right here, if you remember.
Yeah. So this is interesting. So this is the site that, you know, Chris Dunn famously took all his images of the head of one of these statues that was on the ground right in front of right where we're looking here. And they've since these two statues on the left were damaged and laying on the ground, so they're in pieces, and they've since been repaired and put back together. So that's been the major change. And I do have a little bit of video from a few years ago when it was all damaged, so you can see the difference. I actually think it's kind of cool that they did that to reconstruct it, to put things back together. They've cemented the statues back together, but at the same time, they've also put these. You know, there's any possibility of anyone getting a close look at the head or of the head jet, which is the crown that's on top of those statues. You know, they've lifted that thing up now, you know, 30 feet in the air. So it's really going to be hard to scan it or to get even detailed photographs on it from an even plane. So, you know, we've got the work of Chris Dunn to go on, and that's it.
Yeah, those are the bowling pin hats, the head jet crowns.
Mm.
I
do not trust concrete holding that up. Sorry, just saying, like modern concrete.
If you do head back at any.
Yeah.
I give it 200 years and that thing's on the ground again.
It might be. Yeah. I think I'm talking to someone.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. That's it. It's really.
Oh, yeah,
inside baseball. What's the plan?
No, I think someone who was probably wanting to head back. It might have been Sheila.
So the sphinxes, the row of sphinxes, are they traditional sphinx style? Are they also rams or what?
I think these ones
they were lions.
Lions?
They were the lions? Okay.
In my memory.
I've got some pictures of them from another trip, and we'll get there. I'll answer that one in a minute. I can't recall off the top of my head.
So I want to understand, why would they carve, you know, this sort of sphinx-like body with a ram's head and then a sphinx with a lion's head, but then the sphinx is a lion with a person's head. Like, what do you think about all that?
I don't have an answer. I suspect it was attributed to different deities, perhaps at the time, specifically given, you know, the different flavors of animals. But I don't know, and I don't know why they weren't human specifically.
Thank you,
sir.
Sir.
It's a tiny human head as well. That's weird.
Yeah,
all the animal ones are in the right proportions, but the human head is tiny.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that obviously the one thing you can be certain of about the famous Sphinx is that it's been recarved. I mean, that's not the original head. It's
when you see it in person as well, the head is like, and the body, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that if it was the same people that carved these small ones, that also carved the human head into the Sphinx. That's just interesting. I wonder what the deal
Well,
is.
I think it was dynastics in any case. I think the small sphinxes are likely the work of the dynastic builders of these temples, when they, you know, I don't think they made these statues, but I think they made the walls and the sphinxes. And I also think the dynastics were likely responsible for the recarving of the Sphinx at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who knows what it was originally? I know there's a lot of debate. Here's more of those lovely legs and toes, although the toes have been chipped off. Someone
day?
was against toes, but yeah, leg day.
Look at those beautiful shiny legs.
Some calves,
Nice
and then just those, beautiful definition to the musculature on the statues. But yeah, these are great examples of some of the.
And you can see that guy in the fists. He's holding the same, like little handle that doesn't have anything attached to it.
Yeah. There's a big one. I have to dig the footage up from somewhere, but I have it of it. It's at Memphis. It's what they call one of the colossi that's laying down. It's like a 150-ton statue. It's on its back, and you can get in and go around it. And he's holding the same things. Yeah. And of course, it's got Ramses II's cartouche carved on it.
Yeah,
which is what you see here everywhere as well. So these are all supposedly Ramses II because they all have his cartouche on them. And of course, these are the statues that Chris Dunn analyzed. And if anyone hasn't seen them, they're in my series on precision and ancient high technology, particularly the one on precision. That he took these great pictures of some of these heads and sort of did a reverse transparency where you basically cut the photograph in half and then you reverse it and you overlay it on top of the original image at like 50% transparency, so you can see just how perfectly symmetrical things are, and they're just incredibly symmetrical. So, and he's also done that analysis on my desktop image, in fact, of all of the common radius curves and cuts that were used to make the faces. They're almost beyond human in their precision. That's how I like to describe it. It's like
they don't look human. When you look them in the face, it's a face, but it's not like a human face.
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense. But you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. They're idealized, almost abstract.
Yeah.
Even though they have all this detail, it's all the and I think it's a combination, because we talked with this. We had our engineer buddy on the show to talk about this. And he does machining work with metal. Now it's small scale, right? But he's worked with machining tools and everything. And he talked about, and Chris Dunn talks about the same thing, that all these common circles that are found in these faces may indicate tool radius, like an arm swing for a specific tool.
Yeah.
Right. And so our buddy was on here and he was like, yeah, so tool changeover is a big deal, especially if you have some enormous machine that's cutting something like this.
Yeah.
But you want to use the same arc as many times as possible before you have to switch it out for a shorter arm or a longer one to get a different arc.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you can find like 3 basic circles that make up 3 dimensions of all these things, you're just like, okay, they had to use 3 tools, and that's on purpose so that you don't have a lot of tool changeover, because that takes a lot of time.
Right. So. Yeah, and of course the conventional theory being it's just all done by hand, and they kind of
right.
Come on. Like, it's laughable that these faces were carved by hand. I don't know anything about carving anything, and I can see it. It's like it just looks like a 3D rendering of something. It's mad.
It's insanely precise. And I just thought I'd skip ahead here to some pictures from a few years ago where you can see that the statues on the left are missing. They're down on the ground, and I think there's maybe even the single one on the right that's gone.
Oh yeah.
You can kind of see the head here in the corner.
And what about the obelisk? There's just one? Like, was there supposed to be 2?
Well, there's the base of one. There's another base.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, probably.
I totally missed that.
Rome stole it.
Probably. Yeah, it's maybe one of the many.
I think there's more obelisks in Rome than
there are. In any other site. Yeah, Rome is the one city with the most obelisks in the world. Yeah, and they're Egyptian. And there's a bunch of them on the bottom of the Mediterranean as well. Like they lost a lot. They lost several of them in shipwrecks and storms trying to transport them across the Mediterranean.
Let's go get them.
Yeah. So this is of course the head, and this is my own shot from when it was on the ground, and this has now been lifted up and put back on top of the statue. And they've sort of repieced it all back together, which is a little, it's good in some ways. And I'm also a little bummed about it in others, because I really was looking forward to getting more footage and it's closer look at it. Just beautiful granite too. You can see the stone.
Look at the size of the eyes too.
And they're very far apart.
Yeah.
that inhuman precision to it. There's something about it that's timeless. It's
I loved Chris Dunn's perspective on the mouth, because he talks about there's this really weird smile that they all have. But then he points out that when you lift that head 30 feet or whatever above the ground, that it stops being a smile because of the perspective, and then it's just like a normal mouth.
Yes.
But when you're looking at it straight on, it looks really strange. But the carvers knew that it was going to be way above everybody's head, so they made it like that, so that when you're looking up at it, it doesn't look like he's frowning at you, right?
Well, we'll see plenty of looks from right. It would otherwise look like it's frowning. Yeah, you're right. And
Same
these
with
other
the eyes. The eyes are to be looking down, so that when you're up there, they're on you.
It's like they built the whole face knowing the perspective. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And also this enigmatic look that is somehow, I like to think of it as this challenge down through time. It's like it's almost an expression of like analyze me and try and figure it out. Like this, like see if you can get to our level.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we have yet.
Ye mighty
there. Look at his smug little face.
Like yes. Oh, you gave me chills with that. The whole what's his name? What's the quote?
Ozymandias.
Ozymandias, yes.
Yeah, Percy Bysshe, Ozymandias.
Yeah, Percy Bysshe.
Yeah, brilliant.
He's kind of got a little Mona Lisa smile thing going on. It's like
that's how Chris Dunn described it too. It's this weird, strange Mona. The smile touches nothing but the mouth. Like,
and I can see now the eyes are definitely like angled downward. That's
down.
Yeah, they're looking
on the other side of the nose. There is really just gives you the.
It's sticking out so that it's looking down. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's magic. Yeah, and we'll get to these photos. But I wanted to just kind of set that up because we'll flip back to this current visit. So again, looking at that's the head. That's that same head. Where are we? That's up here now. Right. So same guy. And this statue on the left of this one was like laying on the ground. It was destroyed as well. So they've reformed a lot of it. They did a good job by the look of it.
Yeah, it looks like they did a good job gluing it back together.
And so they're also in like a walking. It looks like one leg in front of the other.
Yeah, they're taking a step. Yeah,
it's very common. They always have
the pose.
Yeah,
the pose. It is. Yes,
they're either sort of sitting down or one leg in front of the other with the fists of fury. That was. I might replicate this on my Instagram. I might bring back some of the old poses. Just the one leg and the fists.
People, this is what walking like an Egyptian looks like.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that you think that's how the hieroglyphs got, when they're doing them 2D, they always have the legs like doing the
they're doing the same walk pose.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're mimicking these three-dimensional.
I think so. Yeah. And again, this is such a deep conversation because I think these are the relics of that ancient civilization. And I think that the whole stylized version of these kings and these gods or whatever was one that then the dynastic Egyptians modeled themselves after. So it's like, because people go, this is obviously a dynastic Egyptian. How can you say it's older? I'm like, if I was the dynastic Egyptians and I'd started my civilization based on these remnants, I would want to look like these gods,
That's right.
Maybe they inherited more. Maybe they even inherited a religion and more of a system from them. But I think there's definitely a cultural connection that also goes to the styling. And you can get into the
for sure
elongated skulls and all the other stuff and part of it too that are possibly part of this. But I think that's definitely what was going on.
We do it today. Like, look at Beyonce or anyone else that we're just like, oh my God, they're a god. And we just emulate them and the style. And I'm agree with you. I think that what we think is Egyptian is actually like a vintage. They were doing a vintage style of what was before from this pre-civilization.
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes
Good
sense
point.
to me. Yep.
Absolutely. I think I might even be saying, let me see if I'm saying.
How come we don't still build giant triangles then?
Well, we do. Look at the Louvre. I mean, they have one in the front of the Louvre. We do. We try.
We need more.
Yeah,
we do. I agree. That's
right. There's one in Vegas and one in Paris. Then,
yeah. There you go. Vegas.
Toblerone.
The back of some guy's house in the backyard of some dude's house in Russia, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Some people make them. I've been thinking about trying to start one out here, but
you gonna start one.
All right.
Yeah, maybe.
I'll come help. I would love to build a pyramid.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We got some. I'm not sure I've got the quarry. Well, we have a granite
quarry here, right?
Yeah,
We
that's how you have
we
to
got
do
to
it.
travel
Get the
1,000
stone.
miles.
1,000 miles.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Bring the stone to
Easy.
you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We have plenty of limestone here.
No, well, I have granite quarries around me. In fact, this whole area that I lived in near a place called Rockland, it is a granite quarry. There's a lot of granite. In fact, I have some books from the history of this area, and I know some people that can get me into these quarries. I'd like to go visit these quarries and take a little look at like what it's like today and working. You know, do the comparison between ancient quarries and modern quarries.
Yeah, we visited. What was it?
All right, you can do the plugs.
Yeah, you'll do the plugs and the
inner chamber.
inner chambers. We'll bring the stone for the
We'll
rest.
bring
of
the giant triangle.
Yeah.
Bring it. Yeah, that's what we need.
But yeah, we visited a serpentine. It's serpentine, right? Marble.
Uh-huh.
We visited a quarry
Yeah.
in Vermont, and the quarry, the owner took us all through and showed us the machines they use, showed us the older areas of the quarry that are now filling with water with the different kinds of marks, and talked about all the processes. And man, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and about that, real quick, just one of their methods for cutting is they use this giant chain. Basically, it's a chain of cylindrical links that have diamond edge, all the way around the little cylinders. They all link together, really long chain, and they will, kind of clear out an area, and it has to be a loop. It runs through this machine, and the machine just is running that chain through a sprocket, and so they'll do whatever they have to do. They'll drill a giant core all the way underneath
to get the chain through,
and they get the chain through it, and then they bring it over the top of the area of the stone, the mountain, or
so
whatever.
the machine's at one end of the hole. Yeah,
and then they start running that chain, and the chain goes down through the rock, and so the cut that they end up with is it's amazing looking, flat and everything, but there end up being these curves, and because it just kind of seeks its own path of least resistance, right? So you end up with strange concave or convex areas of the cuts. So I don't know if some of the stones that you showed us that have these strange cuts may not be circular saws.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Some kind of chain that just goes
chainsaws.
Yeah, giant chainsaws too.
Yeah, just without the bar.
They don't have the bar. There's just the free chain going.
Yeah.
Just the chain.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a few ways of doing it. I've often thought that may not be circular saws. It could also be a swing saw. There's I think there's a few possibilities. Yeah, I just don't think it's a copper bar that's been ground into it with sand and water. That's for sure. Let's see.
That I was here is the.
I'm going to talk to myself.
I'm glad I'm here. They apparently have repaired the headjet and the head that Christopher Dunn measured that was sitting right over here at the feet of this statue. And they, it's nice that they repaired it and put it back together, but it's no longer sort of at eye level. You can't really analyze it or look at it. So.
God, I was completely hoarse. I've been talking so much. My voice was shot.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, you can't talk.
And the dust and the pollution, everybody was like, at the end.
Much. There's your little monkeys around the base of the obelisk, at least on the stand for it. And so, yeah, here's the footage I took that I stabilized. I mean, I was using my regular, not stabilized camera, but this is the only other footage I have of this. It's video. And in the daytime.
It looks so different at night. It looks like more magic.
It does. I want to make sure next time that we do see it in the daylight as well. I like it at night as well, but I'm definitely interested in.
I think I missed so much of it because it was in the dark. It just looked really cool. I felt like I was in Hogwarts or something. It was just so magical.
It is, yeah. It's definitely worth seeing at night. Let's skip forward to the images. So yeah, there's the layout, the Temple of Man. It's kind of has that kink to it. That's all explained by Walid Lubitz.
It's on the wonk.
It is on the wonk. This is true.
On the wonk.
Let's see. Let me find something here. So anyway, we've seen the front. Let me get to
freaky face.
What was that? Kyle? No. Were you saying something, Kyle?
No, I was about to sneeze. Didn't happen. Averted it. Crisis averted.
Crisis averted. Anyway, so here's the broken remains of another part of the statue, like the one on the, I think on the far left. This is what they've kind of put back together, which is nice.
Oh wow.
So this is what it was like a few years ago.
Oh wow, they really stuck it back together.
Yeah, they did a good job.
Bit of tape.
Yep.
You can see the quarrying marks that
Wow. Look at that.
quarrying the damn thing. And then yeah, as you go in, we get into there's a bunch more of these seated statues with their headjet crowns on top. And that's the other thing worth mentioning is there's as much complexity, if not more, in the carving of those bowling pin headjet crowns as there is in the face. There's Chris Dunn's does a very detailed analysis of those in his book too. That's worth that's worth getting into. I'll just let this.
It's a real unusual choice of hat. Like it's never come back.
Yeah, now that is that is one thing to say. Hey, let's bring it back. Right?
Yeah,
I will.
I'll wear it.
2021.
These look like they might even be human-faced sphinxes. Let's see. I know I have.
Oh yeah.
I know I have some closer.
Oh yeah, do they have the beard jutting out thing?
I don't think so. Maybe. Yeah, they do. Some.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Aha.
That's cool. The statues look so much bigger almost from afar. Because it's like, whoa.
It's also heaving with people back a few years ago, and we were just so lucky to get the chance to see these places.
Yeah.
People.
We're just walking around. I now expect Egypt to be completely empty because that's all my reference. If I go back and it's full, I'll be like, what?
Yeah.
What's happened?
Yeah, we were just running around temples, just us. It was crazy.
Man, once in a lifetime.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that your dog?
He was one. He's one of the temple dogs.
There were so many dogs, so many little puppies, like tiny little puppies that were just running out. And I tried to feed some banana, but they didn't want it.
There was actually a nice that we were at this on the last day. I think it was the day after the tour. A couple of people came late because of the COVID issues and stuff, but we went back to Saqqara, and there was at the entrance to the museum there was a pack with a bunch of puppies, these little fresh puppies, and it was pretty cute actually running around. But yeah, a lot of I guess stray dogs and just general dogs. People do look after them. There's also a lot of cruelty that goes on. I mean, but they're all over the place. You can't visit these sites without seeing packs of dogs running around.
I'd take about 200 home. You can't save them all.
Right.
Crazy.
Is that where you got Obi-Wan?
Yeah, I've bought him back as well, as well as my rocks.
So the faces on those on the sphinxes look nothing like the big statues, at least from the pictures you just showed a little while ago.
Yeah. Different. I don't think they could do those faces again. That's the thing. They could never get them right.
Yeah.
Just need to paint that one orange.
Oh, and this line of sphinx keeps going. Like there's behind where that wall is, they keep going. Like they keep finding them, like miles. So it's quite a lot of effort.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
It's really intimidating. It was great if you could do that outside your house. Like imagine the postman coming up and you've just got miles and miles of sphinxes. I can imagine walking up to all of these temples. I felt like a tiny little peasant. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you would be shaking in your sandals coming up to these places.
Yeah, it's awe-inspiring, right?
Yeah.
We don't seem to do stuff quite like this anymore, do we?
Right.
It's different. And this is Bill Ramsey's II cartouche, quite cut deeply.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah, he cut them like 4 inches into the wall to make sure no one could wipe it.
No one could.
Yeah. So yeah, there's the scale.
Yeah.
That's huge.
The me next to it from a few years ago. Play. What else are you doing? Yeah, okay. Let's skip forward here. I'm just gonna scan through these pictures real quick to see.
Yeah, it does. It looks so different in the day than it does in the night. It there's more detail, I guess, in the day.
Yeah, and it sort of became evening. It was a late afternoon visit the first time I was here. But yeah, several more of these statues. Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I haven't looked into much of what the scholars say about the hats, but just looking at them myself, like there's the traditional bowling pin hat. Usually has like a curled reed, almost like a piece of grass coming out, and then there's the type that look like two reeds that are coming up parallel, and they're curled away from each other, and then they get wider and wider apart. It's like a gate opening and different hats. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. There's two types of crowns. The headjet, and I forget there's a name for the second one as well. There's two styles that you see on the pictures, and I think then there's the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt.
Yeah, like unified
They
Egypt.
have. I mean, they look very organic. To me, it looks like, okay, one's like almost like a seed pod, and then the double one is like, okay, after it's germinated or something.
Right.
And then
Do you know what that swirl is? Because Yusuf told us.
No,
so he said when you see the hat with the like what you said, like the reed coming out with the swirl, that's a sound wave. He said that's the sign for a sound wave. So it's all like resonance around the head. On the hieroglyphs. And I was like, what? Because they're holding like tuning forks, and then they've got sound waves bouncing off themselves in these little like crystal chambers of resonance. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It's all linking up.
That's cool.
Every staff is a tuning fork. If ever you go look at the hieroglyphs on the walls, and every single time that someone's holding a staff, you see the bottom of it's a little tuning fork.
Yeah.
Always a tuning fork. And you see this classic Uraeus with the snake cobra at the front, and there's two distinct styles of these crowns that are on top of these statues. This is the headjet, then there's the other one. God, I should remember the name. I mentioned it in my it's in Chris Dunn's book, and these are all pretty much headjets here, but they're at Karnak. There's the other style as well.
There was a when we went down in Dendera to see where like the light bulb hieroglyph was, what was even just as interesting was just to the side of it, there was glyphs which showed like temples and had like swirly lines all around it. And I asked what they were, and Yusuf said, oh, this is how to activate a structure. And this is again sound waves all around the building. And I think I have a picture of it. I definitely took photos of it, but it was like 3 temples and 3 different types of waves all around the building. I was like, okay. And then that made me think of the weird granite that got all messed up inside. And I was like, well, maybe these structures did have some sort of, if you activate a building with how, but it could be linked.
Yeah, and I think Dunn talks about that too in the power plant, the Giza power plant book. He wonders what caused all the damage to the interior of the pyramid, and what kind of process was it that, something very energetic happened in there. And if this like extended out over a whole system of structures, then that may be part of what they're seeing there is the stone is damaged because there was some kind of catastrophic failure of whatever system they had built.
Yep. Yeah, and it's Abbasia to Abbasia, the crumbling basalt. There's definitely something going on, and I mean the whole King's Chamber or upper chamber.
Yep.
Having been moved out an inch, like in every direction, like it's been something happened. There was an overpressure in there for one reason or the other.
Yep.
The opposite direction that it would seem to want to go,
want to move. Right.
Yeah. You'd think.
Like they, not to get all Sherlocky, but like you're looking at all these different things on the different sites and these different glyphs. But when you stand back, it does actually paint quite like a story that all does make sense or could make sense. And I was like, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've never felt so much like a detective in my life. It was great. 2 weeks. I was like, I'm on the case.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all outside of the. You actually see the tuning fork here. It's hard to see, but it's there is a little tuning fork.
Yeah, the staff. Yeah.
Yep, and these are all the blue-skinned people.
Right.
Again with these giant. This is your double crowns here, and possibly elongated skulls. And you see these elongated skull shapes with Akhenaten and that whole section in the museum's all elongated skulls.
Oh yes. Oh no, that so nearly every depiction of people was tuning forks, advanced maths, like the symbol for advanced maths, and a blue lotus or some sort of drug. So I feel like that if you were high on blue lotus and you had a tuning fork with like resonance and you knew maths, then that's the key to all of this.
Oh.
Getting somewhere. Yeah.
The math part is the hard part. I can do the drugs and the tuning.
I know. I'm like, damn it! I don't think I just barely passed math. I can't. I will not be ascending to the priesthood.
Yeah, you see a lot of this. You see a lot of pipes and things on the walls. It's actually remarkable how much of that there is.
So this in the image, it looks like it's cut into the stone, but is it?
There's an inset. Yeah. Oh, no. So this is all high relief.
Okay, they are high relief because to me, my eyes are making it in reverse, and I guess that maybe because the light's coming from
Kyle
the
has
top.
left-handed dyslexic eyes because to me they look high relief. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you see the shadow. The light's on the bottom, and the shadow's kind of pushing up on top. And that I can see how that you would see that as being dug in, but yeah, it's a shadow.
Yeah, can't do it.
I have some video. We'll get to this in the more video in a second, but I just wanted to share some more of these pictures.
Okay. I just made my brain flip it. All right, cool.
Good deal.
I can see
good.
Light's coming from the bottom. It's weird.
Yeah. And some of this beautiful artwork still has paint on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The boats. Let me go forward.
Oh, what are those bullet holes? I mean, is that what that damage is? Those pock marks?
Don't know. I don't think it's
shooting at that wall.
Yeah.
So much of it is just absolutely trashed. It's so sad.
Yeah. I don't know what the holes are.
Someone coming in at some century and trying to scrape everything off.
There's definitely like deliberate defacement where they've removed faces in some places.
Yeah.
There's your avenue of sphinxes at night looking back down them.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And those paving stones are old too. You can tell in that picture.
Yeah. All right. Let's let this roll as we walk in. So this is at night. This is the more recent visit just from the end of last year, 2020, as we're walking in. I don't know if there's anything worth listening to.
Rose granite.
Yes.
One out of one.
Oh, it's me.
And the obelisk.
Yeah, let's listen to that. We can see what we're talking about. Can't remember. I barely watched
What are we talking about?
Call to prayer.
Just pep it up a touch. Just pep it up a touch.
So he's saying that they're rose granite.
Yes.
One out of one block.
One piece. And the obelisk. Same thing.
It's one piece.
One piece. Like 600 tons.
And he's saying that is legit dynasty stuff, or is it...
I'm not sure what Yusuf says about it, but I don't think so.
You think they were here before?
I think the statues in particular were here, if not, and maybe either moved or this temple was built around them and then dedicated to Ramses.
Yeah.
You have the same thing, these columns, these single-piece granite columns.
Yeah,
see, and this is, Yusuf would call this most likely pre-dynastic pyramid builder culture. See, and these columns are this stuff is likely Ramses and dynastic, but you have a mix here. It's a real mix where they've inherited stuff, and Ramses has written his name on these statues. There's been analysis done by like Christopher Dunn, particularly on these statues, that shows that the symmetry of the faces.
Yeah, okay. We talked about that.
I'm going to make a t-shirt that says there's been analysis by Christopher Dunn. Like it's my most quoted thing.
Yeah. It's definitely been some analysis. Well, so I think that book of his is incredibly important, like that Lost Technologies you mentioned. I think that in the future will be recognized as a significant contribution that that moved this whole shebang forward. But yeah,
I remember talking about that because we called this place the buffet of time because it was all so higgledy-piggledy.
Actually, we have that comment. Where is that? You did say that.
I just remembered when I said that because you were saying about these was here before and this was added after and
lifted up and put back on the statue. They fixed it.
Oh, I see.
But they've picked it up off the
Oh
ground.
yes, because I've seen images of that online and it's
Yeah.
a lot lower down.
Yeah.
This is so impressive. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's just to get your head around.
Yeah.
It's like a buffet of time.
It is.
there we are.
Great
That's the other t-shirt.
Buffet of time.
The buffet of time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take another break.
Memory. Alrighty, let's do that, and we'll come back and wrap up on Luxor.
All right.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final segment of this special Swapcast. And we're still at Luxor, and this is, I guess, our wrap, right, Ben? What else we got?
Yeah. Well, we're going to continue in and look around the rest of Luxor again. We're in this combination hypo style hall / statue gallery. I'm just noticing kind of some of the different scale of the statues. Some of them were larger than others, but I think you have here just this mix of like builder culture work in the statues, and then the later work in the hyperstill hall that's around them. So you get a nice close look at some of the perfection of the head jets here.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm probably yapping something into the.
That is a smooth hat.
Yeah.
It is a very smooth bowling pin.
Look at those legs. He's waxed.
You did do some wax.
Yes.
And so the statues, the upper bodies of the statues are really messed up. Looks like they've been destroyed.
Yeah.
Do you think that's deliberate destruction, or do you think this is all part of some natural disaster?
Like the legs were buried in sand and the upper part got damaged.
Got smashed. Yeah, that actually may be something along the lines of what happened. It's hard to tell how much is either from earthquake damage or it's from the hand of men. I think you probably end up with a bit of both. It's hard to say. I mean, you'd have to go to quite a bit of effort to really break the stuff up like that. I mean, try working on granite like that takes some muscle.
When we discover in the temple, we find it like this, but we don't know exactly what happened here.
Yeah, I think he's saying the same thing. When they discovered it, they found it like this. Yep, called to prayer.
I remember looking at this part and being fascinated that the statues were so close to the pillars, and obviously the pillars had to be like mathematically equally along. So some of the statues, it was just like it was a little bit off center, which for this whole culture of like precision, it definitely looked like they'd added the pillars after, and the statues had been there before, and they tried to do it around them, but it didn't line up in some cases.
And this is the one other thing that I'd mentioned earlier that I wanted to get to, which was that I think there are some features on some statues, like this dot in the middle, that have been since incorporated into the hieroglyphs, because these are the only glyphs not all of the circles in Ramses' name, but only on certain objects. Like there's a Ben stone in the museum that has one, and I think they've incorporated them into the style of the hieroglyphs. You don't always see them with the dot, but you tend to see the only times you see a polished portion of writing is one of these circles with the dot in the middle, and they're rare. But there's the only example I've seen where you have the same level of polish in something,
Sorry, go ahead, keep going.
No, I was just saying that's what leads me to believe that they were contemporary with the object themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't match the technology of the writing, but I think they were clever enough to incorporate them into the writing.
And isn't that supposed to be, I mean, now considered the symbol of the sun? It's a circumpunct, like the circle with the dot in the middle. Isn't that right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's you don't all, like, this is Ramses' name here. This is his cartouche.
I think Ramses incorporated his name into it. He was like, that's how you spell my name.
Yeah.
With the ancient dot.
But they're not always like this. So the hieroglyphs and Ramses' names on other objects, not always like this. They don't always have this dot, but it's not consistent.
But he definitely nicked it.
Yeah.
I mean, possibly, probably.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, you're right. It's very different, isn't it? It's all shiny.
It's deeper. It's not the same as this, but there's these two.
No, you're fine.
With the leaves, with the earrings here, and the hand is tied behind by the rope like this, and this is represent that.
There's that angle you're talking about, like looking down.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Face. And there were also granite single piece columns here originally. A lot of them are broken now. And I think I come back to this this dot thing here. And
so what is, I mean, probably can't answer this, but what does that stuff say on the statues? I mean, there's more than just the cartouche? Does it say like I'm Ramses, I'm totally awesome, and I totally built this, or is it
more or less
complicated? Yeah, more or less. Okay.
Yeah, Ramses. It's attribution to the king, as far as I know. That there's I don't know. I haven't seen a specific translation other than like on specific objects that I've chased them down. But
do they look similar? Like, you know, when you're looking at the backs of multiple statues, do the sets of glyphs on there and drawings basically look similar, or are they different?
They do, but go on.
No, I was just going to say I think they're all a little different, but I definitely recognize a few of the glyphs, like Ramses' cartouche is common.
Right.
But I wouldn't say I don't believe they're identical in terms of what's written on everything.
Yeah. Not exactly identical, but it's close. Like, it's basically attributions to the guy and saying he's amazing.
It's hard because I started to try and look to see if I could start recognizing some, thinking that I would like learn it in a few days. And what was crazy is that the same symbols can be arranged in different ways and mean 6 different things.
Right.
In like it's crazy how they build sentences, and you can read them up, down, left, right. It doesn't matter. There's different ways to read it. So I just gave up at that point. I was like, I'm not going to learn.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
Yeah, maybe you can see how it's uneven. He's a lot close, or maybe not, but you can see how they're a lot closer to one side of the pillar than the other, and it was weird for such a precise object to be not balanced.
Right, it's like the pillars are equidistant in terms of from each other, but the statues are offset like very good.
But the pillars would need to be the same for like whatever they were building on top, so they couldn't move the pillars. So I just feel like they definitely tried to build around
you think
these statues.
Do you think they were not capable of moving the statues, or they chose not to move them on purpose?
Yeah, well, they didn't balance it out, and it was like a weird little bit of OCD in me. I was like, you just gotta, it's not right. It's not looking good, guys.
Yeah,
I agree. It's very obvious. He's shifted way close to that pillar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, dude. It's an odd thing. And it does make me wonder what the original plan was.
So I would want to look. This is probably not possible, but I want to look at the hieroglyphs on that pillar right next to that statue where it's pretty much impossible to get in there and work on it. And that would tell you, like, if they have good ones in there, that would tell you that maybe somebody was good at carving hieroglyphs from the side,
or they built it's in pieces, so they could have carved it.
Okay, so the hieroglyphs aren't on plaster; they're in the stone of the pillars.
I think these are carved. Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
They're quite.
So they built it. They carved them on the ground and then put them together.
Possibly.
All right.
It could have been done that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good point though.
It's possible. They look like stacks of sort of Rolos. Actually, do you even have Rolos in America?
No, I know.
Yeah.
Like the tube of chocolate, but yeah.
Let's see. I think Yusuf's talking here. I'll see if we can pick up his audio. That he's talking about one of these hedgettes. Hang on. Get the video to even out. There we go.
Exactly. This is the filtable spar. This is the white one, and this is the transparent one. This quartz. The white one like this is white spar. The transparent one like this is quartz.
Very jerky.
This has a very high amount of quartz.
What are you doing? Why is it
I can't really understand what he's saying. I can hear.
Yeah, no, I think they're called prayers in the background. He's talking. He's basically looking at the stone and pointing out the different components in the granite, the feldspar, the quartz, the mica, the different. It's that difficulty in trying to get a precision surface like this over a stone that has these materials of different hardness and different composition. I think that's the point he's trying to make here.
Yeah, what is it like? Mica is like a 3, and feldspar is like a 4 or 5, and quartz is like a 7 or something. Right. So it makes it difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And the parts of it would blow up, but you have this perfectly finished and polished, 3-dimensionally symmetrical shape.
And
yeah, and I would like to see. Yeah, has Chris Dunn analyzed it? Those, I mean,
Yes.
yeah,
from photographs and just like superficial measurements and
yeah.
palm of the hand. Nothing. Again, it's one of those things. I'm like, why haven't we gotten a proper 3D? So like what Patrice Poyard did in the caves of Barbara or something like that, where you get a very high res. Not just. I mean, the iPhones are good, but not like a proper, high resolution laser scanner and actually analyze this thing, because the details are right there. Like we could
set up like surveying quality LiDAR and get a really good scan.
I'd like to see the how regular is that taper all the way around the thing. Is it
compound curves that are
perfect? It looks
it looks so perfect. You could run your hand like beautiful.
It feels perfect, and you can tell. I mean, again, and I'd like to measure it. I'd like someone to do a flatness or at least a surface roughness test, because that was one of the revelations to me recently on that last one of the videos I did with Patrice, where it's like, well, they're down to the 1.2 or 1.3 micron, which is like a micron being 1,000th of a millimeter. Degree of flatness on some of these surfaces, which is just not. I don't care how much lapping you do, it's just not possible. To achieve by hand, and I don't think anybody ever has. Like that's the challenge. Like go do this by hand, replicate that level, and incorporate these most difficult aspects of the problem, and then we can talk about how it was done by hand. But no one will ever do it because I don't think it's possible.
Yeah. And the other thing is that the bowling pin shape that could be lathed, except that it's attached to a head that's completely not be centered.
Well, actually, I don't think you could, because it leans back. It's not a perfect upright. It actually has a tilt back.
Yeah, Dunn talks about that in the Lost Technologies, that the bowling pit is sort of it's got a slump,
curved back. Yeah.
So you couldn't even lathe it.
Yeah, you have to. Man, so that's just bizarre. I don't know.
And then it's funny, like this shape here. This is just moving away from that back to these halls. This is made from blocks. These are made from rounds, but this replicates the shape of some of the Old Kingdom solid granite columns. This is almost an exact. This is where they've specifically replicated what some of the columns from like Saqqara were at, where they have 16 of these immaculate single piece columns that are identical. And now you've got this later replica made from sandstone and rollos of sandstone, basically.
So they stacked up blocks and then they cut it out,
and it's amazing work. Nevertheless, I mean, that is just beautiful work right there. But
it is quite phallic. I mean, you can't. There's there's a lot of phallic shaped pillars in Egypt.
There are.
They're mushrooms.
They were showing off. Look at my pillar.
You should see some stuff like that in South America.
They were looking for the lost phallus of Osiris.
Yeah.
And they were everywhere.
You can find the phallic glyphs too. They did. There's like some pretty good.
Oh yeah. Oh, especially at Karnak, they were intense.
Yeah. Right.
Always enjoyable when you find those. Glyphs.
Yeah, I didn't notice at first, and I was like filming, and I was like, oh, okay.
It's quite the story involving that in their creation. If you get into the details, it's kind of a little strange, but each to their own. Oh, and so this is cool. This is this is do you notice the different style?
This is the Christian or the Greek or
So these were all painted over at some point and made like an old. I can't remember what early I think this early AD sort of temple. I mean, it was turned into a church. It was all this stuff was painted over, and there's still a little bit of it left. I think Yusuf was mentioning it. Yeah, so you still see some of that color from the Greek or Christian work.
Interesting.
I guess that was. That looks like a plaster that was plastered over, and then it was.
Yep.
Walls were plastered over and then
like
painted on.
Yeah.
Terrible job.
It was a bad job.
Yeah. Same thing at the Coricancha when we talked about it. Like it's all plastered over and drawn on. Get rid of this scrap. Out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah.
It's crazy because in England we're used to like a lot of history, so it's not unusual to see like medieval things or even Roman things, and then when you see like Christian stuff coming into Egypt, you just realize just how big the timeline is, because you're like, whoa, these guys were this was what I thought was ancient history is actually, yeah, it just really pulls your perspective when you see this stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because the stuff that you would consider really ancient in England, you're seeing it is the latest, crappiest.
It's like, oh, there's the new people coming in, and
Yeah, that's a good point.
painting all over this, and we're like, whoa, that was like the beginning of England. Oh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Hey Kyle, you're not going to believe this, but I do hope you're recording my audio, because I may have had my mic on mute until about now in my OBS.
I have been.
Yeah.
Very good.
The whole
Yes.
the whole time.
Yes, so Kyle's got
some
it.
of my bad habits.
Yes.
Snake Bros' most
You've
Forgotten
artifact is the record
button.
Have you done that after 2 hours though?
Close.
Close.
Oh, yeah.
We've had to almost
Okay.
pretty much redo an entire show because we realized.
Well, I think we'll make
Yeah.
this one work. It's all right. He's got it. Yeah, we're fine.
I got it.
This is impressive. It looks like you film in a great way. It's like a computer game. I feel like I'm going around like,
Yeah. Yep.
it's great. Go in here.
Yeah, I should also always make that disclaimer is that it is raw footage, right? So I know I'm wafting back and forth, but I'm often when I film, I'm often trying to think about just like individual short shots and slower pans, but you do get a lot of the flipping around. And I don't edit any of this. I just like chuck it all in. So
No, that's what I liked about your stuff when I found your channel, because I was like, I feel like I'm there. I've never been to Egypt, but I feel like I'm just walking around with you, which I like the fact that it's not edited down.
Yeah.
Because I edit everything within 3 seconds of its life. I'm just like,
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I'm doing that on some of them.
Yeah, I think that it's great footage, and you've definitely, I can see the advancement, and because like like we've done a couple of shows where you're like, yeah, pardon this footage, it's old.
Yeah, right.
And this is the modern around in Peru.
Yeah, I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
About, I know what to do now next time I go to video something.
Yeah.
Because I mean, bringing up the panning is it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want those nice steady pans. Yeah. This is. Go ahead, Jenna. You know what this is.
This was the wall with the potential sperm that turned out not to be a sperm.
Right. That Jimmy had done a video on. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jimmy did a video on like a potential sperm, and we saw it, and then it wasn't the sperm.
Yeah. Yusuf had another explanation for it, which
makes
I can't
sense.
recall. Yeah. Specifically what it was.
And also, what happens with the internet is you see a hieroglyph on the internet that gets depicted as something, and then when you actually go there, you see like right next to it is like a similar one or an exact same one, but then it basically debunks a lot of the internet stuff, because when you actually see like the one on the Dendera with the light bulb, I didn't realize that there was like 2 sets of different light bulbs, and one definitely looks like a light bulb and one doesn't because where the pillar's hands are holding inside and stuff. So yeah, that, and the same with this sperm one. Right next to it was a very similar one with the sperm, and what was the sperm? So yeah, go there and double fact check before all the internet people go mental.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the context.
Right.
Yeah, it's easy to create a lot of stuff on the internet, but if you haven't gone, then
I think this is the
can't fact
last.
check it.
Indeed. This is the last clip. We're walking out of Luxor after our evening visit, ready to go back to our hotel after a lengthy couple of days. This was a great, I mean, it was unfortunate that our cruise got cancelled at the last minute, but because this is one of the stops, you kind of park the boat right next to the temple and get on and off. But yeah, I definitely need to get back here in the daylight at some point. I think that would be pretty epic. But yeah, I like that point you made about the perspective on the faces of these things, because you definitely notice that when you're underneath them.
Yeah,
you get the regular looking mouth and the eyes that you can appreciate.
Yeah, well, and the whole place is it's absolutely amazing. The dynastics definitely did.
Stunning work.
They were incorporating what they could into it, and they did a beautiful job.
Yeah.
Even if those giant solid stone statues were already out there in the desert, they came in and They
build
made a
up
beautiful
something.
place around it.
I think it's way cooler to imagine that they found ancient artifacts that inspired them to do great, wonderful things than just developing them themselves. I mean, either way, it's still awesome, but it's I don't know, for some reason, our lives are filled with this, right? We find these ancient artifacts that are inspiring, and so it's kind of cool to think of Egypt as a place where these people in ancient times also had the same thing happen to them. I don't know.
Indeed.
Yeah,
like
and
the idea.
And in Peru, what we were looking at before, it seems the same.
Absolutely.
Like these people who are ancient to us now came in and found artifacts that were ancient to them then, and had the same. And they had the same effect, and then they would build these things around them that now amaze us.
And how long has this been going on? Because
Yeah.
if there was
Right.
a previous culture, what did they find? What inspired them? Did they start it all, or did they
Aliens.
also find ancient things that
Right.
led to their development? And how long have we been doing this, where we go through some kind of cataclysm or some type of bottleneck, and then when we're out exploring and we find what we did in the past, and I don't know, it's just it's an endless mystery, and I love it. And it's really great to be able to look at all this footage with you guys, and it's awesome. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yay.
I'm glad you got to go.
Yeah.
Hannah. Man, wish we would have gotten to go.
I know.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time.
Next time.
Yeah,
Next year.
Let me stop that.
Yeah, it was cool.
We're done. You guys can close down that stream too. I've gone back to the there's
All right.
three of us on the screen for the recording. But yeah, that's a good point about whether or not it's happened before multiple times. That's the sense. We talked about that in South America, possibly, that the megalithic builders may have come across the work of the monolithic builders, the Hanan-Pacha stuff, and who knows if this happened here before. And the best, I love using that example of we're doing the same thing. We are inheriting, we are renovating, we are reusing, we are labeling, and it's just human nature in a lot of ways. We just keep recycling stuff, and for sure we've been around for 400,000 years as a species. We know that from what is in the current fossil record. I think potentially that window could be as long as 800,000 or 900,000 years. We know that from the date that we split with a common ancestor with the Neanderthals. So that's the potential window, and just to imagine that, our civilization is the last 6,000 years, and that's it. It's like, come on,
of course, another part of it is how many of those other hominid, brother species or sister species could also do this kind of stuff. And this is why we were talking about this when we were looking at the stuff in Peru, and we're just like, it's so strange. But what if it was built by someone who was not Homo sape? It was
exactly
like a different kind of human, a different kind of hominid, and that's part of why it's so eerie. It's I mean, I don't know if that's even possible, but it's an interesting question.
I think it is. I think it is possible, because you have things like the Denisovan bracelet. And we just don't know. I mean, they had brains like ours in a lot of cases. Even like Neanderthals had a larger brain. Who's to say? And we're just that warlike and that aggressive. I mean, that's the way we run it. We just may have been the ones to finish them off. But yeah, that great video, that Exurba video, like We're the Last Humans Left. I think there's a good chance that some of this ancient stuff may have involved other forms of hominid. I mean, I certainly can't rule it out. And again, it's just,
I love that Tolkien world, man. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Where are the
Exactly.
elves and the dwarves and
wouldn't it be wild if that's
if
that was like the way it really
the way it was.
You
Possibly,
got it bang on. That was complete truth.
That's
right. Yeah.
And we're like, what a great story. It's amazing. No, it's real.
Bang on. He knows.
real
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, and it also extends to that, like other senses, other capabilities, like that could explain some of this stuff, right? We're operating within this, we frame everything from, it's how we see it, how our technology works, how we've developed as a civilization. We frame everything in that context. And I really do think some of these answers and explanations could be outside of it. And it's just, I mean, it's a tough answer to go look for, and it's tough to drop that context. But yeah, I mean, it's just we know that we don't know everything, and in 100 and 1,000 years, we're going to know a lot more about the fundamentals of nature, our own history, all these things. And it seems naive and arrogant in a lot of ways to declare these things all solved when it's clearly there's aspects of it that aren't solved.
Yeah. And it's also interesting to me, I mean, getting more speculative here, but different, what you could call like Earth regimes, like many cultures have this idea of like different suns. Representing different ages. So you got we're in the 5th sun right now, and it was already very old when the Mayans were talking about it being the 5th sun. They're like, they depicted it as being ancient, wrinkled. It's old, the 5th sun.
Yeah.
And it's the 5th sun because there were multiple ones before, and each one of those suns, like an age or whatever, ends in a cataclysmic destruction and a rebirth of everything in a completely different regime.
Yeah.
And could some of those regimes have just resulted in a completely different kind of consciousness, even within Homo sapiens? Like if the electromagnetic field was different in terms of Earth, and it was strange, more powerful, vibrated differently. I don't know. If the sun was putting out different energies, I have no idea. But could that make
if constants weren't constant?
Could it make us perceive everything differently?
Yep.
I don't know.
Why do we think that we are better? Because we basically delegate so much stuff to machines so that we don't have to do it, and we think we're really clever. Like I don't even have to know where I'm going because my car tells me. And we think that's like the ultimate tech and intelligence. And I'm like, but what if previous civilizations were just super intelligent but in a different stream? And so it'd be like us showing them a battery for an iPhone. They'd be like, what? But they would show us their technology and we'd be like, what? Like,
It's like,
that
what?
seems
I just
more
power this
probable.
with my brain. Yeah.
I just think it, and my friend can hear it, and I have to use this phone to do the same thing. I think we're doing the same sorts of things or the same tasks, but we're just doing different technology, different ways around it.
Right.
Different
Their technology was focused more internally to the way the human or Denisovan or whoever they were,
organic too,
how they function. They were developing. Their technology went on a completely different route, and they developed different types, and were able to do things like we can't even imagine.
That's right. Yeah, we have this electromechanical approach to problem solving, and it seems clear that builders had a much more organic approach to it. Like you wouldn't have built some of these things out of the stone unless you had a way to do it that was much easier than how we find it. And I think I've probably given this example on podcasts before, but I love the idea that eventually that organic nature of technology becomes superior. So if you extend our technology field far enough, like we're into space, and so when we really go into space, we're making big spaceships made from composite lightweight materials, but when you get big enough, and there's plenty of science fiction that's explored these topics, when you get big enough and more powerful enough, where you say you're a type 3, whatever, type 2 Kardashian civilization, where you can harness it, when you can start to harness the fundamental forces of nature, like gravity, then spaceships don't look like spaceships anymore. They start to look like planets and moons and things that can form their own gravity, their own atmosphere even they could contain. Like that's... So, and you get back to this, like you're now back to these organic materials. You don't have a need for composite, high strength, lightweight materials because the weight doesn't matter to you anymore, or the restrictions that we have on it don't matter anymore. And that's, you all sort of end up, our technology chain eventually ends up there, assuming thousands of years in the future.
Right. Yeah.
And who knows? They may have progressed more down that organic path than we have yet. I don't know. I definitely think that some of these answers sit outside our current perspective, and it's just always something to always keep in mind is that we are always looking at stuff through our lens, our perspective, and we don't have all the answers, and just I wish we could admit that, and then we might go and investigate it to maybe find something, learn something. But as long as we're insisting that we know this was done because these are the tools that we have in the archaeological record, and so therefore that's how it was done, then it's not, we're not going to get to the answers that way. So
That's right. Believing you have all the answers leads to not asking any good questions. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So
that's
cool.
what we're here doing, asking all the good questions, right? And all the bad ones.
Definitely asking a few questions. Yeah, I'm sure I've asked a few bad ones in my time. But that was good. Yeah, I enjoyed looking at those sites again.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Reminiscing.
Yes.
Indeed.
The old times, Ben. The old times.
The old times a couple of months ago when last I travelled. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, it was good.
I hope I get to go somewhere this year.
Yeah.
Come on, world.
Yep, slowly. Yes, I've got a couple of announcements coming up pretty soon about trips for this year. So hopefully they'll happen. I hope so. But that's the plan.
Cool.
Gonna try. So yeah.
And we're going to the Scablands. So that's gonna be fun.
We are. Well, there. That's happening in May. Can't wait.
Nice.
That's gonna be great. Yeah, that's going to be fun. To meet you guys in person for the first time too. That'll be it.
Oh yeah.
You guys and Randall and Grimerica boys.
You'll never be the same. You're not going to recover.
Quite possible.
Be traumatized for life.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I'll manage.
For anyone who is umming and ahhing about joining one of these trips, it is worth it. It is so worth it. Like it is a once in a lifetime opportunity to go and see these things, and you will be getting something that isn't the tourist, like the mainstream track that you would if I'd just gone to Egypt. I could have gone to Egypt at any time, and I'm so glad that I did this one because I would have missed 90% of what you showed me if I'd just gone myself. So
cool.
Do it. I'm just plugging you there, Ben. Plugging
Thank you.
Trips.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean my plan is to hopefully do them at least once a year, probably be max. But you know, in that area, I do intend to do more. So yeah. Hopefully get to go back.
All right.
All right.
Well, thanks, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll try not to do a microphone snafu on the next one.
No problem.
No problem.
We'll make it work.
You save my ass once, I save your ass once. We cause it deep.
Yeah, we are even now. Yeah, slate is clean.
Cool. All right. Good night.
Amazing. Night. Have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thanks.